Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. So today I want to show you how to get a chainsaw up and running. So I picked this up for about $10. It is a Poulan 2150. I was told that it had not been started in quite some time, so I'm assuming it was sitting for at least a year or longer. Luckily it was in the carrying case, so that hopefully kept it a little bit better protected from elements and things like that. You'll notice right off the bat that the primer bulb is missing. So that was fairly dry rotted. I believe it fell out on my way home and I could not find it. So there are some things on this that definitely need replacing. So I went ahead and ordered a tune-up kit. I will have that down in the description below. It came with a few filters. We have all of the new tubes. We have prime bulbs. We even have the gas line filter, or the filter for in the gas tank, and it came with some spark plugs. So I'll link that down in the description because that is the first thing that I want to start off with this chainsaw. And if that doesn't work, then I am not sure what the next steps are to do. So we're gonna start by removing this upper case here. There are 3 screws that I am just using a regular flathead. And from here, once those are all loose, we can pop this right off. And now we have a little bit more wiggle room for the top of the engine where the spark plug is, as well as where the filter will go. It was missing on this chainsaw here. So what I'm going to do is pop off the spark plug, and with this spark plug out, there is a quick test that I want to run. So I am going to push the end of it back on to reconnect the spark plug, and I just want to make sure that the engine itself is good. There's going to be a proper spark from the engine combusting. So what I'm going to do is just touch the end of the spark plug to the top of the engine here, and with a few pulls, nothing crazy, I should be able to see a spark happening in between the edge of the spark plug. So that will show me that we have some connectivity and that we should be able to go. So with that out of the way, let's move on now to removing this air filter portion on the back. Now this should be fairly similar with other brand chainsaws. Things might just be in a little bit different of an orientation. I do know there are some other chainsaw brands where you can actually get a little bit better access into the gas tank. On this one, it's a pretty hard tank, so we have a little bit of wiggling to do once we remove a few more pieces. So on this chainsaw, I'm using a 5/16 socket to further remove this filter cover. And with those removed, it's just going to take a little bit of wiggling to get it off of the carburetor. So I need to pop it out on a few sides and I can easily remove this. So we are good from there. Now we have access to the carburetor. And from here, what I am going to do is I have to pull the choke, which is on this right side, and pop this out. And then I can actually wiggle the carburetor right off. Now it is connected to the throttle, so there's a metal hook basically that is connecting it right here. So with my pliers I can just bend it a little bit to make it twist there and come right out. So, and looking at the carburetor now, it's actually in pretty good shape. We do have some adjustments on the side here. These 2 bolts here will control, I believe it's the idle speed for the engine, and then I believe how fast the blade is going to rotate. So these are going to be important to adjust if I get this up and running. These can actually prevent it from starting up too. If you have these all the way out and they're not adjusted properly, you won't get any start from your chainsaw. So these look like they are all the way in at the moment, and then we can further put them back in or take them out depending on how the chainsaw runs. So we have that out of the way. Looks like this has a small cover for it as well. And with that out of the way, you can see the inside here where all of the tubes should be. So that is what I got in this new kit. These are all the new lines that I need. And I already went ahead and took these out just because it's kind of hard to see, but these are the original tubes, and they are all dry rotted, cracking, beat up. This is all I have left of all of the tubes for this chainsaw. So we have the new tubing that we can start on basically rewiring this chainsaw. So what we need to do, I'm going to leave the fuel cap on at the moment. That is over on this left side. Actually, you know what? We are going to remove the fuel cap right now because we need better access into the fuel cap or the fuel tank there in order to get these tubes through. So the first one that I'm going to start on, I already have these pre-cut, so I've already done some measurements to get them to the sizing that I need. So there are actually 2 holes down in the backside here. There's one on the far left and one on the far right. I'm going to start off with the one on the left side, and you'll notice that the hole on this left side is very, very skinny. The kit that I ordered actually came with 2 different diameter tubes. So you'll notice that the one on the right side is a lot more thinner than this one on the right side. Much thicker, sorry, the left side here is much thicker than this one here. And that's because both of those holes are actually different diameters. So I'm going to be using the skinnier one in order to put it down this hole on the left side. And I did mess with this earlier. It is a little bit tricky to do, simply just trying to get this into that small hole there. And so what I'm going to do is actually cut off a little bit of the end. I'm going to put it at more of an angle so that way we can actually get it through. And so I went ahead and cut just a little bit more. So hopefully I can get this all the way through while I can give it some effort from the top. And I think I'm going to try to use some tools here just to help kind of get it started into that hole. And once I have that pushed in a good bit, from there, I can actually turn this on its side now and then use my pliers. I can grab the end of that and just start pulling straight down. So the more you can pull it completely straight down, the better leverage you are going to have in getting that through. So I'm basically just going up and then back down, and now you can see I have the end of it coming through. So it just takes a little bit of time in order to do this, and then I can't actually start pulling it from here. So like I said, you have to get the pliers in there and pull the tubing straight down towards the bottom. That will give you the best leverage to get this out far enough so that way we can put on the fuel filter, because this piping here, or this tubing, is going to be what the fuel filter is attached to. From here, I'm going to cut off the end that I had to trim in order to get it through so we can make that nice and flat. And from there, I can attach the new fuel filter. So it might be a little bit easier with pliers to hold it on one side. I found it a little bit easier than using my fingers. This just gives me a little bit more control in order to do this. All right, so we have the fuel filter now attached. I can just put that back into the gas tank. So we have the left side done and out of the way. From there, let's move on to that side on the right. Now, the diameter of that hole is much larger. You could use the thicker diameter tubing in order to go on that side. However, I am not going to be using this. I am going to be using the smaller tube that the kit came with. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I don't have pliers that are long enough to go through the gas tank to pull that tube straight down. So if you have a pair of pliers that are much longer and skinnier and you can actually grab that tubing, go for using the thicker one. For me, I am going to use this smaller one here that also has this stop on this side. So once you put this through, you need to reattach it to this here. This actually came with the chainsaw. This is a stopper for it, so that way that tubing doesn't fall through and it doesn't come back out. And so I have this tube now sitting at the top of the hole. I'm going to use my needle nose pliers here just to help guide it and get it into that hole. So just to get it started. And like I said, it's going to be pretty easy with this one since it is a little bit smaller diameter than that hole. So from there, I don't want to lose this one. So I want to put it as far down as I can and still be able to grab it now. And with a combination of using the flathead and the pliers, I've got it right here. So just enough out. So from here, this is where the stopper goes. You'll notice that one side has the ridges, the other side is completely flat. So that completely flat circular side will go in the bottom, and those ridges are going to attach to this piping. Now, since I'm using the smaller diameter piping, it might be a little bit harder to attach this side. So I may have to heat up the end of this. I might not, but I'm going to use that same method, holding the pliers in one hand and wiggle this on with the other. So it was actually a lot easier than I thought. So I have this side attached. I still have the other end on this right side. From there, I am just going to pull this very gently all the way until it is up as far as it can go. I'm going to do a quick check in the gas tank to see that it is stopped. So now we have our tubing for the left side, we have our tubing for the right side, and now what we can do is we can move on. Let's put the new spark plug in, and from here we have our prime bulb now that we can attach. So we also have one more tubing that we need to attach for the prime bulb. So I'm going to have one end on the larger side here, okay? And then the other side goes to the carburetor. So of course that is not on at the moment. The other line is going to be from this right side. So this right side, we can fish our way through these wires or other tubes, and we can put the prime bulb on that side there. Now, in order to do that, I did forget another step. We do need to remove the housing here that has the pull start. That is the only way we can get the prime bulb back in. So when you're taking this apart, don't forget to remove this section as well. And this has 4 screws. So there's one in the upper right, upper left, and then there are 2 at the bottom. And so with that casing off, we can put these tubes into where the prime bulb will be connected. So luckily I do have the original screws for that, and surprisingly I don't have the right size Allen key for these. I have one that's a little too small and a little too big. So I'm going to use my needle nose pliers and improvise in order to tighten these up. With the primer bulb on now, I want to make sure that all of the tubes are free from each other. They're not tangled up or twisted, and to have enough room to put the carburetor back on. So from here, we can just do the reverse process, and we also need to make sure that the trigger release that we were messing with earlier is also free from all these tubes and everything like that. So with it back in its correct position, as it did get a little bit twisted, I am going to install this first, keeping it attached to both sides, of course, and then I can wiggle it back onto the top of the carburetor here. From there, I need to do my best to put it back on. Pulling the trigger also helps a little bit to give you a little bit more wiggle room. And from there, it can slide right on. Now, like I mentioned earlier, with these tubes, I need to make sure that they are out of the way also of the choke here. So I'm just going to wrap them around the back side there to get them out of the way. There's a stopper for the choke to be held on right there. We still have the trigger on. Hopefully you can see that movement there. And so before we push this any further to reconnect it, we do have to attach these tubes here. So this thicker tube that I was using came directly from the prime bulb. That is going to go on the bottom connection here. That is just that small gold post basically. And then this skinnier tube here is from that left side that went down into the fuel filter. So if you remember the first one we started with, that smaller, skinnier one is going to attach to this upper section on the carburetor. So from there, I can wiggle these back in. I can attach this stopper for the choke there. And then again, I'm just going to push these tubes down into here, making sure that they aren't twisted in any way, so that way we can get gas flow, of course, for these tubes. So with those nice and in place there, I'm gonna go ahead and reattach the spark plug cover there. And then we are all set to button this up. You wanna make sure that these studs, however, are pulled all the way out because they do have some wiggle room to them. And from there, we can attach this we can put these two screws back on, or the bolts there. From there, we have our new filter that we can place just like that. And then we have the covers that we can reattach. So we have that prime bulb there that will get sandwiched in between this. We can put those 4 bolts back in, then we can put this cover back on the top and attach that. And with it back together, it is time to fill this up. Now this chainsaw requires a mixture of 40:1. It also states that on the gas cap here, so that way you know what mixture you have to put in there. For the 40:1, you need 3.2 ounces of oil per 1 gallon of gas. So I did some measurements because I don't need a whole gallon of gas for this chainsaw. So I'm using this glass jar where I did some math and got the correct amount for what I'm going to put in this gas tank. It takes about 12.8 ounces. So I kind of got it right around there so I don't have to go through as much gas, but do as you want with the mixture for that. It is time to fill this tank up now. And with that filled up, basically now in order to see that this is working correctly, I'm gonna go ahead and start priming it, where immediately the prime bulb started filling up with fuel. So that way we know that everything is so far lined up correctly. Now every time you start a chainsaw, you wanna make sure that you do the prime bulb first. I'm going to turn this on as well, pull the choke all the way out, and let's go fire this up. And so as you just saw, that was the first attempt in trying to start this up. Now, after doing some digging and really seeing what the next steps would be for this, I found out that there was a leak in my carburetor. So this had been sitting for quite some time, so it was bound to get clogged up or just have some brittle components like the gaskets for it where it was bound to leak. So what I did is I went ahead and bought a new carburetor. So I'll have this down in the description as well, along with just a tune-up kit if you don't think you need a new carburetor. So this is the original one. And honestly, something that I think I made a mistake on is these 2 screws on the side of the carburetor are for the idle speed, or how the chainsaw is going to idle when you're not using it. And then at full speed, you can adjust the other one to make sure that it is running smooth. After I used the chainsaw just to make sure it was working properly, I noticed that both of these had backed themselves out. So I think if I had turned these back in, I probably could have got it started. But like I said, I went ahead and ordered a new one. It was an easy swap to put this in. So along with the new carburetor now, it is time to put gas in this. I also have bar and chain oil, which is going to go in this front section. That is something that's going to be important to keep that bar and chain, of course, lubricated while you are using this. And if you can notice too, I'll turn this sideways, the chain is actually fairly loose at the moment. In order to tighten this, I simply just have to loosen both of these. I can pull the bar forwards and snug those back up. You don't want to have that much play in your chain because it could risk popping off while you are using it. And so with the chainsaw up and running, the last thing that I wanted to touch base on again is showing you this clip here where I am adjusting both of those screws on the side of the carburetor. So the one that is farthest away from the trigger is for the idle speed. So you can hear it right now where it kind of bogs down a little bit because I had that screwed in a little bit too far. So I backed it out and the idle was a lot smoother. Then the second bolt, which is closer to the throttle, is for the high speed. So when you are on the trigger, that is how you can adjust how it's going to react at full speed. So you can hear in this clip here just a little bit how it kind of bogged down trying to put on the throttle. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, getting a chainsaw up and running. It really wasn't all that bad. It did take me a few weeks just kind of puttering with it and learning how to do this. So I figured it'd be a good time to showcase with all of you to get a chainsaw back and in working condition. So if you enjoyed today's video, give it a huge thumbs up, smash that subscribe button. I will see you all in the next video.